Well, as all of you know, in finance, we're heading into the markup. It started yesterday, and I wanted to ask Senator Scott and Senator Portman, who are in the middle of all of that, and some of the leaders on the committee on this tax reform effort to say a few words.
The good news on tax reform is so often we spend a lot of time talking about the numbers of tax reform, and the reality of it is those numbers translates into real people's lives who will benefit from the process of tax reform. And as we start discussing ways to use some of the revenues perhaps from the individual mandate to lower taxes for the middle class, this is a classic example of a powerful mechanism for us to address those folks in the middle class, the hardworking Americans living paycheck to paycheck who are looking for a way to bring home more of their take-home pay. Our approach provides relief, significant, substantial, clear relief to those folks working hard every single day in the middle class.
Thank you. Look, the middle-income folks that I represent in Pennsylvania are going to benefit from this bill in two ways. One is they're going to owe less money to Uncle Sam. Their federal tax bill is going to be lower than it is today. And the second way they're going to benefit is we're going to take what is arguably the worst business tax code in the industrialized world and turn it into one of the best. And the result of that is going to be tremendous economic growth, economic expansion, business startups, business expansion, and the kind of job creation, and finally, upward pressure on wages so that working families can enjoy a better standard of living. That's what's coming when we get this done.
Yeah, we're making great progress on the tax bill. We're debating it in committee right now, and it has real middle-class tax cuts that the Joint Committee on Taxation is willing to show us. Look at their tables. What they say is that the family in America that is at the median family income is going to get about a $1,500 tax cut. Now, in Ohio, it's about $2,400, so it's even higher. And these are folks who need it. A lot of them are people who are living paycheck to paycheck. They haven't seen their wages go up in a couple of decades. Even though we've had some economic growth recently, still wages are pretty flat. So this is a critical part of the bill. But also, it's important that we fix the tax code so we don't continue to lose jobs and investment overseas. And that's what's happening right now. So for those who are defending the status quo, I would ask them, does it make sense that almost 5,000 companies have become foreign companies over the past decade or so because of our broken tax code? Those companies would have been American companies based on a study that was done recently by Ernst & Young if we'd had the tax code we're talking about. Does it make sense that we have $2.5 to $3 trillion locked up overseas that could otherwise come back to this country to be invested in equipment and plant and people, more jobs? And I think this is where, for the folks I represent back in Ohio, we're going to see even more benefit than the middle-class tax cuts, because we're going to see more jobs and better wages. So this is an exciting opportunity. I'm glad we've gotten started now in the committee. We'll have lots of opportunity for debate. We've had over 70 hearings on this just since I've been here in the Senate in the last six or 7 years. We had 5 bipartisan task forces we set up 2 years ago that reported on all these issues. We have spent a lot of time and effort in putting this together. Now it's time to move it through committee, get it to the floor, have a vigorous debate, a spirited debate, but at the end of the day, deliver for the people we represent.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Well, I think that pretty well lays out what we're about this week. On the floor, we'll be confirming some more nominees that probably should have been confirmed much easier than they will be, but we're plowing through nominations while the committee finishes up the bill probably on Friday. We'll be on the floor with this bill the first week after Thanksgiving.
One of the things I hope we do as part of this tax process is repeal the tax on poor Americans. Right now, about half of the people that pay the penalty under the individual mandate are people that make $25,000 or less. And rather than buy the insurance that supposedly we want them to buy, we overprice it and then we penalize them when they can't afford it. So we are going to repeal the tax on poor Americans It'll amount to about $43 billion over the next 10 years. That'll be a huge influx of money into their pocket that right now they're having to pay the federal government. While we simplify the tax code, while we let people keep more of what they earn, and while we get competitive once again in a global economy and bring jobs and investment back to the United States.
You heard my colleagues on the Finance Committee summarize pretty well what's happening on the committee, but I would just simply add to that by saying that, you know, what we've heard a lot from the Democrats so far are these attacks basically saying that somehow middle-income families aren't going to get tax relief, or that the tax relief is going to be skewed toward high-income Americans. Well, the fact is very simple, that middle-income families are going to receive tax relief as a result of this tax reform bill. And the reason for that is we double the standard deduction, we expand the child tax credit, and we lower rates. And those rates go through all different income brackets. But middle-income families in this country are going to receive a significant tax cut. According to the Tax Foundation, as Senator Portman pointed out, $1,500. My state of South Dakota, it's about $2,500 in tax relief for the average middle-income family. And then secondly, what this exercise is about, in addition to getting tax relief to middle-income families, is getting a growing, expanding economy that is generating better-paying jobs and higher wages. The American people, although we're starting to see the economy pick up a little bit, haven't had a pay raise in nearly a decade. Wages have been flat. And the way that you get wages up is you get the economy growing to where businesses are expanding their operations, and the demand for labor goes up, the price for labor goes up, and the result of that is higher wages. This is about better growth, better paying jobs, higher wages for American workers, and middle income tax relief. Those are the goals that we set out to achieve. The Senate bill achieves those, and I hope that we can get it through the committee this week, across the Senate floor, into conference with the House, and on the President's desk before the end of the year, so the American people can to get the much needed tax relief that they need, so that they don't have to live paycheck to paycheck.
Well, I think as the Senate Finance Committee settles into a final bill, does everything they can to be sure this has the broad middle income base that we want it to have, the facts are going to speak for themselves. A family that makes around $70,000, family of four, will have about a $1,500 nationwide tax break. In my state, it's about $2,400 according to the Tax Foundation for that middle income family. And $200 a month makes a big difference. $200 a month means you can do a number of things with your family that you can't do without that $200 a month. It may just mean you have some savings to fall back on when things happen you don't anticipate. And every number out there indicates that many families in the country don't have a $500 to fall back on. $500 is a disaster. Well, if $500 is a disaster and your tax obligation is $1,500 less than it was, or $2,400 less than it was, believe me, that makes a big difference.
You've heard the numbers. A significant portion of American families know that $400 or $500 if they had to come up with it immediately would be a significant economic hardship for that family. We know that a significant portion of Americans don't have 24-hour access to $200 in cash. A tax cut that has been tax relief that has been estimated at $1,300, $1,400 or more per American family is significant tax relief for hardworking Americans. In Colorado, Mark from Larkspur talked about the fact that he spends about 5 weekends a year trying to get his taxes done for his family and for his businesses. He knows that simplification means he can spend more time with his family and put more money into his business. We spend the entire economic output every year, the entire GDP of New Zealand, preparing and filing our taxes in this country. It's time for real relief. It's time to grow this economy.
Yeah.
So this idea of the individual mandate repeal in the Finance Committee, that's going to be in the bill, and you obviously think that that would help get it to 50 votes if that's the case.
Yeah, we're optimistic that inserting the individual mandate repeal would be helpful, and that's obviously the view of the Senate Finance Committee Republicans as well.
Leader McConnell, Roy Moore has given no indication that he's going to withdraw from the race. Cory Gardner yesterday called for an expulsion vote if he doesn't withdraw. Do you support that?
Well, I think where we are, the President called me from Vietnam on Friday. We had a chance to discuss this issue. I talked to General Kelly about it on Saturday, talked to the Vice President about it yesterday. And there's no question that there's a deep concern here. Roy Moore should step aside. The women who've come forward are entirely credible. He's obviously not fit to be in the United States Senate. And we've looked at all the options to try to prevent that from happening. Obviously, this is close to the election. It's a very complicated matter. And I think once the president and his team get back, we'll have further discussions about it.
Senator McConnell, you said that you believe the women who have accused Roy Moore of sexual misconduct. Do you also believe the women who have accused Trump of misconduct?
I'm sorry?
Do you also believe the women who have accused Trump of sexual harassment?
Look, we're talking about the situation in Alabama, and I'd be happy to address that if there are any more further questions. Yeah, Nancy? Yeah, well, I'd rather not. You're saying if he's elected? Yes. Yeah, I'd rather not. It's up to the people of Alabama to make this decision. I think they have a lot of information now in making a decision. Obviously, from a Republican point of view, we would hope to save the seat, and that might require a write-in, and all of those things are under discussion. Well, we're taking a look at that. We passed a resolution the other night that Senator Klobuchar and Senator Grassley took the lead on, and that working group located in the Rules Committee is considering what further steps we may need to take. Thank you.